While some hymns were written in a moment of inspiration, the creation of How Great Thou Art followed a much longer winding path. For it is the masterwork of at least 2 authors and more than 50 years of heartfelt experiences. On a summer afternoon in 1885, Carl Boberg, a 26-year-old Swedish pastor, was returning from a hike in the countryside. While he was still a few miles from home, a thunderstorm broke on the horizon. Taking refuge in an abandoned farmhouse, Boberg watched in awe at the spectacular display of God's power.
The storm unleashed the full force of its power, with driving rain and great peals of thunder. Then, after an hour, the skies cleared as quickly as they had first darkened. A rainbow arched gracefully, and a clean breeze blew softly through the fields. When I arrived home, the lake outside my window was like a mirror. The song of a thrush lifted from the woods, and a church bell sounded in the distance. I fell to my knees in humble praise to the God who held all of creation in his hands.
That evening, Carl Boberg, still deeply moved by the beauty and power of all he had experienced, wrote a poem he entitled, O Storgud, O Great God. The following week, he read the poem in his church and later published it in a local periodical. Much to his surprise, its popularity spread throughout Sweden as it was sung to the tune of a traditional folk melody. In 1907, Boberg's poem, now turned hymn, was translated into German. Then 20 years later, a Russian version was published. Yet, it wasn't until Stuart Hine, a British missionary, heard the song in a small Ukrainian village that a remarkable chain of events, resulting in the hymn's enormous worldwide impact, would be set into motion.
The people would sing the hymn together as they walked through the forest and mountain trails. Its words seemed to carry it to heaven, triumphant and full of joy. I was captivated by its message and set my heart to one day compose an English version of this beautiful song of praise.
Like Carl Boberg, Stuart Hine was inspired by the natural splendor of God's creation. The first stanzas of his English rendition flowed easily from his heart.
O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the works thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the mighty thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed.
During the next few years, the hymn stayed alive in Hine's imagination as he preached and distributed Bibles throughout Czechoslovakia and the Ukraine. Yet as his ministry expanded, he became increasingly aware that though the people he encountered in these remote mountain villages had a deep sense of appreciation for God's creative power, they knew almost nothing of his greatest gift to each of them. One day, the missionary watched in amazement as an elderly woman picked up a Bible and slowly read the account of Christ's crucifixion to a group of her friends.
It was a moment I will never forget. As she read, people fell to their knees, crying out to God in prayer, thanking Him for sacrificing His only Son on their behalf. In that wonderful instant, they understood, for the first time in their lives, the true magnitude of their Creator's love for each of them.
Stuart Hine wrote the third stanza to the hymn a few days later.
And when I think that God, His Son not sparing, sent Him to die, I scarce can take it in. When on the cross, my burden gladly bearing, He bled and died to take away my sin.
With 3 stanzas now written, Hine looked forward to the completion of his English version. He had no idea that more than a decade would pass until that day would come. In 1939, World War II exploded throughout Europe. As the fighting escalated, Stuart Hine was forced to leave Russia and return to England. There he continued his ministry in his besieged homeland. When the war ended, he remained in London to work with refugees from surrounding countries. In 1 year, more than 250,000 displaced men, women, and children poured into England seeking temporary asylum. One evening, several refugees were asked if they had any questions. The response of a young woman echoed the feelings of everyone in the room. When are we going home? When are we going home? Hine knew he had the inspiration for his 4th and final stanza.
When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart? Then I shall bow in humble adoration, and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art.
After 21 years, Stuart Hine's work was finally complete, and the door was opened for the unmistakable power of the hymn to spread throughout the world.
Consider all the worlds thy hands have made.
In 1957, How Great Thou Art was introduced to massive audiences within the United States when George Beverly Shea performed the hymn during the Billy Graham Crusade held in New York City.
Universe display.
Within a decade, How Great Thou Art would be translated into dozens of languages and sung in every corner of the earth. Its message of the Lord's infinite power and love transcended every culture and denomination. And today, more than a century after a young Swedish pastor first wrote a poem in praise of his Creator, it stands as perhaps the most beloved hymn of worship ever lifted to the ears of God.
O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the works thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the mighty thunder, the power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee, how great thou art. great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Saviour God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Sings my soul, my Saviour God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Saviour God, to thee. When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and take me home, what joy my heart shall feel. Then shall I bow in humble adoration, and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my